Hi, Gary Zacharias here. We'll be doing a series of videos to let you get comfortable with what's going on in our class. And I thought I would start, this will be our first video, I thought I'd look at the research paper. If you turn to page 94 in the textbook, that's where it's discussed, and I know you can read it, but I just want to give you some highlights. This is a little different research. A lot of people are used to going out and finding information and dumping it into a paper and turning it in, saying, there you go. And I used to do research that way. And I realized I was bored reading those papers, and the students were bored doing those papers because they didn't get a chance to express themselves at all. So I came across something called an iSearch paper, iSearch, letter I, which means you are going to be involved in the paper. You'll actually be in the paper as well as the information. So that's what makes it a little bit different. You're allowed to be in this. It's going to be a story as well as your search for information. So it's got 5 parts, and I've got a bunch of these samples that you can look at on Canvas. Just go to research area and take a look. I've got, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 papers that students have turned in the past. So that should help you just to see what they look like. But basically, you find something you're interested in, something you think you can get enough information on. But be careful. I've had some students try to take a big bite out of something that's way too big, and it just overwhelms them after a while. I'll give you an example. I had somebody doing Dwight Eisenhower, President of the United States back in the 50s, and I said, that's too big a topic. So because I said, you'll find books and books and books, and you're going to have to read just tons of material. And it's going to be bigger than what it needs to be. It's going to be a book itself, so narrow it. So he ended up finally narrowing it down to one episode that happened to Eisenhower while he was president. It was about a 1 week or 2 week period of time. I said, great. Now when you find those big books out there that are on Eisenhower, you can just read the section about that item that you wanted to talk about. You don't have to read about his life, his marriage, his war experiences, all that kind of stuff. Just focus on that one item. So make sure your topic, whatever you're picking, make sure there is information on it, but not a room full of information. You don't want to do an entire life of somebody. You don't want to do a history of a nation. You might not even want to do one battle if it's a huge battle. So narrow it down. You pick what you'd like. I've had people do things about careers. I've had papers on historical ideas, quantum computing, animals, diseases that run in their family. So it's up to you. You pick something that you don't mind doing a little work with. And it's going to have 5 sections. First is, why'd you pick the topic? Second is, what'd you know before you started? Third is the actual searching for the information. I want you to read that part very carefully and look at what it says in some of the sample papers, because you're not just finding the information. You're going to tell me how you found it, then you're going to tell me the information, and then you're going to evaluate that source. Now you do that for every one of your 10 sources. You need 10 sources for this paper. So you have to do that, all 3 things for each source. Does that make sense? How'd you find it? What was in there? What was the information? And then you evaluate it as good or bad or questionable or whatever. Okay, so that's really important to know. I said as the semester goes on, there are going to be some updates. So it's not just, here, go write a paper, but I will give you updates along the way where you'll have to do a bit, a piece, a little, and all of a sudden you've got a lot. You've got your paper ready to go. So don't feel like this is overwhelming you. And be sure to check with me as you're working on this in case you have any questions. So that's the research paper. Please look them up as far as some of those samples so you get a feel for it, so you can get the structure of it down. Okay, so that's that. Let's talk then about the very first essay that you're going to write in this class. It's called a profile essay. If I can find it here. Okay, it's called Writing a Profile. It's on page 10 in your textbook. So what's a profile? What are you going to profile? You can profile a person, a place, or an activity, but make sure it's something you're involved with. So don't do a famous person. Don't do Elon Musk or a president of the United States or a famous singer or something like that. I want you to pick, if you're going to do a person, pick somebody in your family, somebody on your sports team, a good friend, a minister, or a rabbi, or priest, or somebody like that that you're in contact with and you've seen a lot. So you want to know this person really, really well. So if you do a person, make sure that person somehow is connected to you. If you do a place, again, make sure it's a place that you connect with. Don't do the South Pole if you've never been to the South Pole. If you have, go ahead. Tell me about it. What was it like? But make sure it's a place that you are connected with somehow. And if it's an activity, guess what? Same thing. Make sure it's something that you are connected with. You took part in it. You were part of it. Maybe it was a concert. Maybe it was a sports event of some kind, but you were there. You got to be part of that action. So that's a profile essay. Key thing, I'm in the first paragraph there on page 10. Vivid, good details. And that's why I'm making this your first paper of the semester, because I want you to give me details. I want you to be clear on what it looked like, what it sounded like, what it smelled like, what it tasted like, what it felt like. So use all your senses. Be descriptive as well as you can for what went on and who that person was or whatever you're going to be doing. So tons of good details. And then the second paragraph says, make sure the details add up to something. Don't just have a bunch of details. So here's a bad idea. You want to tell me about your mom. So you say, she has a store. She runs a store. She's a good cook. She worships at her church every Sunday. She takes care of kids. She participates in dancing, as a fun hobby. Well, okay, so you've given me all this information about your mom, but it doesn't really add up to one thing about her. So what you want to do, if you're going to do a person, pick one aspect. Maybe it's your mom's dancing abilities. Okay, there's your focus. Or maybe it's your mom's, the way she raised her kids. Maybe it's the way, how hard she worked to get to where she is in her job. So make sure you have that's called a focus. So don't just throw a bunch of facts. Don't tell me about Yosemite, which is a beautiful park up north. Don't tell me how old the park is. Don't tell me how you get there. Don't tell me the usual temperatures. Don't tell me what river goes through it. Don't tell me about some of the spectacular falls. Focus. What was it that really drew you to Yosemite and you fell in love with? And then just focus on that. Okay, so does that make sense? And again, when you have a paper, I will walk you through a process. First, it's think of a topic, and then I've got some beginning questions for you to do. I've got some follow-up questions, and then we do a rough draft, and then we do a final draft. The other thing we do as we do each of these 5 papers is we look at some samples of other people who've done similar things like you're going to do. So in this case, starting on page 11 is an essay called The Things That Carried Him. And this is a story of an activity. And it's a pretty solemn activity. It's the death of a soldier and his burial back here in the United States, the memorial service for him. So there's an activity. Then the next one is on page 15. It's George Washington at Mount Vernon. I wrote this one. And this is a story about what it's like to visit Mount Vernon, which was George Washington's home. So it's a place, right? So the first one was an activity, place. Guess what the third one is? It's on a person. And it's called, it's an excerpt. It's not the whole essay. It's on page 18. Addiction, video games crowded out man's real life. This is a pretty sad story. Good land. This person got caught up in a video game addiction so badly it just messed his life up. So it's a look at a person. The other one, remember the other two, an activity or a place. So there's your 3 choices. So every time I ask you to read an essay, I have some questions in the back of the book I'd like you to answer and be thinking about it. So we'll end here. Here's the end of the first video for the class. Research, get started on that as soon as you can. Be doing these updates as the semester moves along. Check with me if you're not sure about your topic. You can change the topic. You might start for 2 or 3 weeks and then get really disappointed in it. That's fine. Go ahead and change. But let me know. And you have to play a little catch up, but that's all right. And then start in on that profile essay. Be thinking about that profile. All right, so I'll let you go. And thanks for watching. And we'll do another video soon.